Hello everyone, this is Krasimir Kostov again from Bulgaria. It's a continuation of the first educational attempt. As we have some more things to cover, I've decided simply to finish what I've started so that we can go through the first blog, the first lecture of the private teachings of Mr. Keshe, so that we have all the information. I tried to make it short and simple, simply to continue the same way we did last time. Even without a PowerPoint presentation, we can just move along the lines of Mr. Keshe and what he said. So we finished on the subject of food, of prayer, of emotionality, lymph being the physicality. Now we continue with what he said, that how the fields interaction leads to creation of plasma, how the interaction of plasma leads to creation of entity, and how the creation of entities lead to creation of conditions that leads to what we need. Here basically we can see a simple process, at least that's how I understand it, that in the beginning we have a field interactions. We have a field interaction. Let's make it 4. Come on, come to the 4. Okay, it's gonna be 3. So we have a field interactions, alright, that lead to the creation of plasma. Those field interactions lead to the creation of plasma. Then the interaction of plasma, we have interaction of one plasma, we have interaction of another strange looking plasma and another, and this interaction would lead us, how he says the interaction of a plasma leads to the creation of entity. Probably he means, I'm simply guessing, the free plasma. So this free plasma entity which interacts with another entity, so we would have a star formation which would interact with another star formation and interact, let's say, with another star formation, where we have basically the free plasma in the middle. So we would be creating an interaction of free plasmas. This is an ongoing process. And those free plasmas that are called entities, at least that's my hypothesis, lead to the creation of conditions. So overall, this interaction would lead to creation of conditions, which might be magnetical and gravitational conditions, which leads to what we need. So there is something like a step-by-step process, at least that's how I understand it. First we have field interaction. Okay, we have fields. Then interaction of fields lead to creation of plasma. Then we have plasma. Then we would have the interaction of plasmas lead to creation of entity. I believe this is the free plasma, but we'll write it as he said it, entity. And then the interaction of entities leads to the creation of conditions. It will be small because we know the small is creating a big. So We follow the same principle. And these conditions basically leads to what we need. Condition would lead to what we need. Or as always, Mr. Keshe is asking why, what purpose, what do you want to create with your plasma, with your system? For what reason you are creating it? So we would be answering the question why, or our need. And in here, basically, in the red, we have interaction, interaction, interaction. So we have fields, fields, fields that interact, and then they would lead to the creation of plasma, and plasmas would interact and would lead the creation of entity, and entities would interact to lead to the creation of specific conditions, the interaction of which might lead to what we need. So this whole process should start with what we need, why we're creating this plasma, and why are we looking for these interactions. Are we looking to create energy, or are we looking to create food, or are we looking to create a spaceship? Everything that we will be creating would need to be, this question why would need to be answered. Okay. Then he continues, if we learn one process, anything you need to give and take from the environment requires condition to be created for it. Then it's easy. If we learn one process, anything you need to give and take from the environment requires condition to be created for it. Then it's easy. As far as I understand, what he means here is basically coming back again to the concept of the conditions. So whatever we need to give and take from the environment, we would need to have conditions for it in order for it to happen. So we would need to have magnetical and gravitational conditions for us to be able to give and take from the environment. Conditions would be needed to be created for that to happen. And that's why we went through this process from the fields towards the conditions, because we know so far that all plasmas are the same with the same structure, and the way they manifest depends on the conditions this plasma is put into. Understand the condition you create gives you different plasmas but of the same origin. We're coming back again to the understanding that basically plasmas in essence are the same structure, but in different conditions it would be manifested differently. So here we would be manifested as a small, let's say, plasma, and here is much larger. But it's basically coming from the same plasma. It's the same origin. The same origin of the plasma is being manifested in the different conditions. So it depends not so much on the plasma itself, rather than it depends on the conditions. And we learned enough about conditions so far. So we should stress our experiments on creating a condition rather than creating a plasma. Giving example, holding liquid. This is very, very important to me. It was really interesting to understand and to see. Mr. Keshe is giving example. He's holding a liquid copper oxide gas and the dry copper oxide gas. And he says, there are two types of CuO. One we have chosen for it a condition in which it can be a powder, and another condition in which it can be a solution. So he doesn't say that this is a liquid GANs and this is a dry GANs. He says we have chosen in the tubes that he's showing the same CuO, but he says for one of it we have chosen the liquid to be its environment. This would be the CuO. One we have chosen for it a condition in which it can be a powder and another condition in which it can be a solution. And here we have only a powder. But why is this important, you would say? Oh, it's the same CuO. Basically, you would say pretty much the same, no? That's what I was thinking too. But listen to this. The effects are different from the two plasmas of Ganses. So the plasma of Gans of the liquid would have one property and the plasma of Gans of the solid would have another property. Have we thought about it so far? I didn't know that it's like this. Let's make these tubes better looking. If you create plasma from liquid, you get totally different behavior if you create plasma from dry. So what do we have about plasma? We have behavior. So you have one behavior from the liquid and another behavior from the dry. In liquid, the distance between every plasma of a GANS is dictated naturally by the GANS as it is created. So it would mean that in the liquid, let's make this tube bigger so that in the liquid, it says, the distance between every plasma of a GANS. Now we're talking about plasma, but a specific plasma of a GANS. So I believe there are levels of plasma. So it would be plasma of a GANS. You would have a plasma of a solid. You would have a plasma of a sol. I guess I'm just hypothesizing there are different levels of plasma. And one of those levels is at a lower level or some kind of intermediate level is a plasma of a GANS. So he mentions it a couple of times, plasma of GANS. Like the effects are different from the two plasmas of GANSes. No? In liquids, the distance between every plasma of a GANS, again the same wording, is dictated naturally by the GANS as it is created. So we have plasma of the GANS here, plasma of the GANS here, plasma of the GANS here, and the distance between those is natural, or let's say naturally created. Excuse my writing on the board. The distance between every plasma of a GANS is dictated naturally by the GANS as it's created. Naturally created, okay, or dictated. Let's be precise. Dictated naturally by the GANs as it's created. What this means is that, I guess, there is first of all, the distance between the ganses is very important because he's mentioning it. The distance between the plasma of a gans. And then you can have dictation over that distance. So it can be dictated naturally by the gans as it is created in terms of the liquid. And there might be a different option as well. The powder, it will be a different distance. And if the liquid is naturally created, dictated by the GANs as it's created, I guess here it would be forced or not naturally dictated, the distance. It's just a guess. I'm not saying it is true, but I'm guessing it might be. And he says when you add water to the powder, you will never get the same performance as the natural liquid. So basically what he's saying is that even if we add water to the dry GANs, to the dry plasma of a GANs, you would not get the same results. It might look like this is a liquid plasma, but it would actually not be a liquid plasma. It would be a dry plasma with added water inside. If he says you're looking for high plasma conditions, plasma GANs, liquid plasma GANs is the wrong material, but everyone is using it. High plasma condition, liquid GANs is the wrong material. So what would that mean? That with the liquid plasma, we don't have a strong plasma condition. We might call it even weak liquid. And the dry plasma of GANs would be strong. Have you thought about it? I haven't seen so many experiments with the dry plasma or combination of both. Dry, he says, is the best material for a high plasma condition. Weak, or let's say low plasma condition, and we have a high plasma condition. So they're opposite to each other somehow, at least to me. With dry, you allow it to release its own energy according to what you dictate. Again, this is very important because you allow it to release its energy how you want it according to what you dictate. See, this is something that I have never seen so far, or maybe nobody has shown it, I don't know. But he says something very important. Mix it with alcohol, you have a different performance field. If we mix it with alcohol, you got a different performance field. He says mix it with blood and you get different performance field. So you can have the same plasma. If we mix it with blood, we would get different field performance depending on the substance we combine the dry plasma with. And we can dictate the field release of the dry plasma. The space, he says, in the magnetic gravitational field positioning is different. Would that mean that the liquid that we add would differentiate the distance? Let's say in alcohol, we would get the plasma distance to be, let's say, 1, and in blood, you would get the plasma distance to be, let's say, this would be the plasma, let's say 5. We don't know, but it's very interesting, at least to me, a revelation and at least a direction towards experimentation. Because if I have the dry guns, I would definitely try different things. I would not recommend anyone trying anything without precautions and without understanding. But it's a direction where we can try some new things. With dry, you dictate what you want to release and how you want to release it. Again, coming back to the understanding that dry is where we can dictate. Now we have the dry. So we can dictate what you want to release, and how you want to release it. How to release. With dry, you dictate the spacing. So you also dictate spacing. So the spacing between the plasma avagans seems to be important to the conditions that are going to be created. This is interesting. Dry, you release a field, and with liquid, you absorb. I believe he did not say this 100%, but he was pointing out in one hand that with the hand that was holding the dry CuO, you were releasing, he says, a field, and with the liquid, he was pointing to the liquid CuO, you absorb. What would that mean is that liquid GANs, liquid plasma of GANs, would be absorbing, so it would be sucking in, or can we call it gravitational? And with the dry, you would be releasing, or you would be pushing out fields. So can we call this a magnetical? So would that mean that with both we will create the conditions where we will be able to work with a plasma? Would that mean that between two layers of a liquid and a simple dry, we would be creating those conditions where we can have interactions to create new plasma, or to start a plasma where it can manifest itself in accordance to the environment. So by controlling the environment, we'll be able to control how this plasma will manifest itself. This is really, for me, a new direction of experimentation. He comes back again. Condition means dictating what you give and what you take from the environment. So, conditions would mean what you give again and what you take. What you give, can we say the magnetical part of it, and what you take, can we say the gravitational part. This is conditions. And from the previous words, we know that basically is what you give and take from both levels of energy. What you give and take from the, well, usually I write the gravity with red, from the gravitational level of energy, and what we give and take from the magnetical level of energy. This would be conditions. So conditions are even more important than the plasma itself, probably. Now he says, if you mix a liquid and dry, what you have, you will get the body of the man. Dry is the physicality, and liquid is the emotion, the total structure. So dry would be the lymph, and liquid will be the emotion. To be able to understand the condition you create from the same thing, so basically from the same thing you create different conditions. Now he was talking about the feeding on a different subject. He says, once you consume the animal and basically how it lowers our energy, how it lowers our soul's energy, and what is the process, the natural process, and the scientifically explained process of how this actually happens. He says, once you consume the animal, the smell touches your emotion and the blood connects, and we absorb the pain. So the smell would be the gaseous, and the gaseous would be the emotion. It would be the free plasma, the emotionality of it. It depends on the expectation. He says that somehow what we consume depends on the expectation of what we're going to get from it. So the expectation is always important. Again, going back to what he said, the thinking and the feeling, those two levels are the ones that create what we absorb. What we expect, he says, is what is important. When we drink water from the cup of life, now he's talking about the cup of life. You remember there was this thing with the cups that were created. They look nano-coated. It looked like a nano-coated copper to me, but I don't know exactly what's the structure of it, but we can know how it is functioning now. He says the following: when we drink water from the cup of life, we take water physicality, but we give of our energy to the cup. So again, we are taking something from the cup of life, but as we know, there is no one without the other. We need to give back something else. So we take water, or the physicality, and we give back our energy to the cup. In health, he says, people give what they don't need. So again, it's giving and receiving. We receive what we need and we give what we don't need. This is very important. So it's not important what we take so much rather than what we give out. Cup of life is not a giver, but he says a balancer to the taker. So the cup of life gives you whatever is needed only for you to give back what is not needed. It gives you what is needed, and it doesn't take, but you let it go what you don't need. So the cup of life is a balancer, is not a giver but a balancer to the taker, and the taker is the human. When you hold with your hand or drink, you drink your own intention. So again, intention and expectation is what is important. I pick with the intention to serve, to get energy to be able to serve. So this should be the intention. Whatever we do, again, we are here to serve and not to be served. So whatever we do, picking up. Okay, I guess this is again. Whatever we do, we pick up a cup of life. We do it with the intention of serving. We are here to serve and not to be served. And if everyone is following this, things will change rapidly, drastically for every one of us. But I guess it takes time to build up. And that's what we're doing, trying to build up and serve. He says there is no difference in killing a plant, an animal, and the rest. So don't give me this vegan, vegetarian. Killing is killing. So it doesn't matter if you kill the entity, the plasma, the soul of a plant, or we kill the soul of a cow. Why there is no difference? Well, because the soul has the common denominator of the creator. And why there is no difference? Because we know that all plasmas are the same, and basically they manifest depending on the conditions. So basically the plasma of the soul of the cow and the plant is the same plasma put in different conditions. So let's not be intolerant, let's not discriminate by saying that the soul of a plant is not so mature or so developed as the soul of a cow. I guess if your soul was put into the conditions that the soul of the plant was put in, you would be manifested as a plant or a cow. And I guess then it would not be so nice for you to be killed and eaten. Even sometimes Mr. Keshe says even the plant eaters are even worse. Because why? Because a cow can give generation, okay, but people are eating different parts. 10 people, 20, 100 people will eat one cow, no? And the plant, it also can give generation. So, but in a bowl full of rice, you would be eating so many souls, because each one of them will be able to give to make a generation, to reproduce. So you would be eating much more souls in reality than if you would be eating a cow, because it will be distributed by 100 people, and here 100 souls will be distributed in one people trying to be vegan or vegetarian. I don't mind any of that. I mind not understanding it. So now you know. But this is just a hypothesis, no? We're thinking out loud. He comes back again to the cup of life, carries the physicality and the emotionality. So the cup of life is carrying the physicality and is carrying the emotionality, every aspect, both magnetical and gravitational. You absorb physicality if you touch the cup, and you absorb emotionality if you drink or breathe from the cup. I'm thinking, okay, so the dry part would be the physicality, and the liquid or the gas would be the emotionality. Very interesting. The plasma has specific structure in releasing its energy, and that specific structure is dependent on its environment and not on itself. It's coming again to explain that the release of the energy, okay, let's stay here. The release of the energy of these plasma would depend on the conditions it is going into. So if this would be the man, very tall, and depending on the conditions he has, the plasma would release its energy according to the specific structure. It is dependent on the environment and it is not dependent on itself. So what is going to be released inside of the body of the man that is using the cup of life would depend not so much on the cup of life and the plasma inside, but it would more depend on the conditions this man has inside himself. One of them would be the expectation. Then he goes into something else, something different. Maybe he would come back again, don't remember. Once we see the light, we have received the energy of the light, and what we see is what we absorb. A sip of coffee. So, the eye of the man, as we found out, is what is absorbing the visual, the energy. It's a good looking eye now. Not so much anymore. I like it like this. Okay. So once we see the light, we have received the energy. If we don't see it, we don't receive the energy of it. So once we see it, we have received the energy of the light, and we see what we see is what we absorb. This is interesting. So we know that the amino acid allows us to see at different spectrum level. So we are able to absorb only a specific spectrum of energy because of the structure of our amino acid. Would that mean that if we evolve in some way or do something that will allow us to see more, would that mean that we would absorb more? And do we need to absorb more? We don't know, but these are very interesting questions to me. I would want to see more. Infrared sounds really interesting. I guess with the plasma we will be able to see infrared too. We'll see. Again, it depends on our amino acid structure. Once light enters into our body and body and eye to become tangible and visible, it has to give out its energy in a plasmatic gravitational field flow. So, tangibility is giving out the energy. Tangible, it means release. So would that mean that the energy of the sun is releasing itself on the point of tangibility of the atmosphere where we see the daylight? We have the sun here, our mighty sun. So would that mean that it still has energy surpassing, but it does not give it away in the backside of the earth because it is not tangible, we cannot see it as light, but in here it gives out its energy. And once it has given out its energy, it starts to rain as different elements: hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, by the field interaction between the Earth's core and this energy. I don't know. I think I got too wild into my hypothesis. Through our eyes, we absorb energy constantly from our environment. We get tired because of the information incoming is so much that we need time to reset. So sleep, tiredness is coming from too much information coming to the eye. Now we understand the problem with all those visual ads and marketing campaigns and everything else. Another eye. This would be a brown eye. So, overflowing with energy, the eye would mean tiredness. And what would happen if we don't overflow it? Wouldn't we get tired? Who knows? He says energy absorption through the eye counts for 20% of the daily energy absorption received. So the eye gives you 20% of energy. So the eye would be giving you as much as the food. And would that mean that if the I gives you 20%, if the I gives you 20%, food gives you 20%, would that mean that all 5 senses are responsible for bringing energy into your body? So sound, touch, smell, it all gives you 20%. This is big question mark. He says even blind people go through this process. Again, sounds carry part of the daily absorption of energy. Food is the same, 20% is food. Sounds get absorbed in the structure of the body of the man. So sounds, what is sound? Sound is very interesting phenomenon, because sound is a vibration, no? I don't know how to paint a vibration, but sound is a vibration and it gets absorbed, he says, not only through the ears, but it gets absorbed in the structure of the body of the man. Would that mean that some part gets absorbed by the liver, some part by the stomach, some part by the heart? We don't know, but he specifically mentions sound. So sound is to be researched in terms of plasma. Plasma only interacts if specific creation condition is created. Again, so plasma would be tangible, plasma would manifest itself, plasma would interact only if there are conditions for it. Otherwise, I guess it would be self-sustaining entity without the need to interact, and it would not be even tangible because there's no need to interact. But when you have specific conditions, it would have to interact, it would have to position itself, and it would have to start dictating itself onto the environment as well, from what we heard from the previous teaching. You take and you give, and then you depend on how much you take and how much you give. We are this plasma, so we take and we give, and then you depend how much you take and how much you give. If you keep on taking, it comes to the point that you cannot give anymore, and then this is the point of death. Well, he says nothing ever dies, but apparently there is this point where he calls death is if you continue and only take. You just take and take and take and take, just like our society, just like the modern culture, take and take from wherever you can, through whatever politics and actions you can do it. Just continue taking, and that's how the society is going down, because you cannot give anymore. And then it is the point of death, because you stop yourself from giving. You cannot give anymore. Because he says, when you cannot sustain the other part is the point of separation, because you cannot sustain the other. I guess he means physical death. When you keep on taking and stop giving away, when you cannot sustain this balance of taking and giving, your body would separate from your soul, and then it will go out into the undimensional, non-conditional space, where again I guess it would position itself, but I guess it would position itself not so close to the creator's plasma, simply because your separation was due to not giving and simply taking. So with this we can end our today's continuation of the first teaching attempt. We can finish with the understanding that we need to give in order for us to be able to receive, and that is why it's best if we continue giving so that we can actually receive. Keep on giving, keep on experimenting, keep on thinking, so that we can bring the knowledge to a higher level. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed it. Wait for the next class to come.